Happy Thanksgiving. I decided to make this video to share with you a story that I wrote about our family, about Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy it. I wrote it when I was living in Japan, and I wasn't coming home for Thanksgiving, and I was feeling very homesick, and it gave me a great deal of comfort to think about our family and remember all the reasons I love Thanksgiving and the things that made me happy. It is a fictionalized story taking place approximately in the late 80s when I was still in college. And it was published in the Tohokusan, which was a little expat newspaper that came out of Utsunomiya. So I was published. I hope you enjoy it. It's called The Potato. The table had been set. Everything was ready. Uncle Peter brought out the turkey, glowing golden brown, and set it on the table, which was in itself a sight to behold. Bright green beans and hearty Brussels sprouts steamed in large wooden bowls next to heaping piles of mashed potatoes and stuffing. Of course, there was the required bowl of turnips, which everyone hated, except Uncle Peter, who said they reminded him of his childhood. There were yams and baked potatoes and gravy and bright red cranberry relish. Every year the fare was the same, and we savored every dish, each bite representing the traditions of our family and the familiarity of the holidays. Everyone was coming from school or from traveling. It was the only time of the year my whole family came together in Connecticut. It was a happy time, a time to remember and visit, and of course, there was the potato. The relish tray filled with radishes, olives, and celery was being passed around the table, and my cousins and I stuck olives on the ends of our fingers, laughing together and remembering how we had done the same as children, pretending we were aliens or frogs. The candles cast sparkling reflections on the wine bottles, the glasses, and the pictures on the wall of the intimate dining room. It was cozy and warm in the small room, and the 12 people filled it quite well. We were all tucked in around the old oval table, where our family has gathered for years. Aunt Anne realized years ago that seats had to be assigned. Otherwise, we were constantly quibbling over who got to sit on the upside. My aunt and uncle's house in Connecticut is over 100 years old and was formerly a barn. The entire structure leans slightly, and this slant is particularly noticeable in the dining room, where one side of the table is dramatically higher than the other. As children, we delighted in rolling marbles across the floor of the different rooms and guessing where they would go and whose would get there first. But come dinner time, it was always a race to the upside until Aunt Anne began delegating the seating. But now, years later, all grown up and adults, Aunt Anne still assigns seats, probably out of habit, and no one gives it a second thought. Everyone around the table was rosy-cheeked and hungry. Being an old New England family, the Puritan work ethic runs strongly in our veins, and to sit down for Thanksgiving at our house, it's necessary to work for your dinner. Aunt Anne directs the preparations in the kitchen, but Uncle Peter is master of the yard, and oh, what a tough master he is. All summer long, the bright green leaves grow on the immense trees around the house. In autumn, they display their brilliant hues of gold and red, and then they fall. They fall all over the grass, the grape arbor, the driveway, and the steps. And on Thanksgiving Day, we rake them all up. It's hard work, but always accompanied by chatter and laughing and the inevitable leaf fight. We take lots of breaks coming in out of the cold to have brandies and crack open fresh walnuts as we sit by the roaring fire in the living room, warming our hands and exclaiming there must be at least twice as many leaves as the year before. Dad and Aunt Anne always play backgammon, a quarter a game, and my father, year after year, is always astounded when he loses. We all take turns in the kitchen under the direction of Aunt Anne. The turkey goes in first thing in the morning and cooks slowly all day, simmering in herbs and butter and filling the kitchen with delicious smells every time the oven is cracked open to baste the bird. Apple pies and pumpkin pies take their turn in the oven as well, and then cool on the counter for everyone to admire. There are potatoes to be peeled and relish to be made and vegetables to be washed and trays to be arranged. And all of this is done in the warm, friendly kitchen, sitting around the small oak table on ladder-back chairs, sipping cups of fresh apple cider and sharing. And of course, at some time during the day, we choose the potatoes. One might think it odd that we would have both mashed and baked potatoes. However, there's a very specific reason for the baked potatoes. The potatoes are carefully selected for their coloring, shape, and size. Usually this was a topic of quite a bit of deliberation, and my cousins and I would gather around the potato bin selecting candidates and discussing their merits until we had a full and acceptable batch of potatoes. This was a special year at our house for Thanksgiving because we were having a guest. My father's cousin John, who had been living in Switzerland for many years, was back in New York and was coming home for dinner. A guest. That could mean only one thing: the potato. You see, we had a rock, a very special rock that had been found in the summers of our childhood down by the beach of the Long Island Sound. It was a small brown rock, speckled and crinkled, and rather ordinary as far as rocks go. But there was something unique about this particular rock. You see, it looked just like a baked potato. Uncle Peter stood up and raised his wine glass. We all followed suit. My family is not particularly religious, and the before-dinner toast by Uncle Peter is about as close as we get to giving thanks. The candlelight shone on his rosy cheeks and highlighted his already quite red nose. He smiled broadly and looked around the room. "Here's to the Pauls," he said. "Thanks again for making it out to the East Coast." Happy beaming from all in our direction. "And to Anthony, all the way back from Italy. Son, I'm glad to see you back. Did everyone hear Anthony's firm is letting him do some designing of his own?" Murmurs of approval from the family. "Alan, nice to have you this year. Perhaps if you're lucky, you'll last until Christmas and we'll see you again." "Dad," from my cousin Jenny, accompanied by a thrown napkin. "And Hillary, congratulations on your successful craft show." Cousin Hill is a budding artist. "And no, you can't borrow any more money until next year." More flying napkins. "Anna's off for China again after the holidays." Oohs and ahs from all of us. "I'm beginning to think she doesn't like being home alone in the house with me. Or perhaps she's growing overfond of leaving me these long lists of household jobs to do while she is gone." Titter titter from Aunt Anne. "And of course, last but not least, John, visiting from Europe. We are all delighted to welcome you home." All eyes focus on Cousin John, smiling conspiratorially. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone!" "Happy Thanksgiving!" we reply in unison, smiling joyfully and clinking glasses with one another across the table, being sure to get everyone. Wine bottles are circulated around, topping off each glass, and then the serving begins. At our house, there's just too much of everything for everyone to be in one place or have any sort of buffet or serve yourself. So we serve family style with all the food, except for the great turkey, which has a small table of its own, on the table in front of us. The plates begin at the head of the table where Uncle Peter serves the turkey, and then make their way around with each person in charge of serving whatever dish is in front of them. "This one's for Jenny. Jen, you want white or dark?" says Uncle Peter. "Both," Jenny answers. "Okay, Yen, how many scoops of potato?" Hill inquires, receiving the plate from Uncle Peter. "Just one big one." "Do you want dressing on the turkey and on the potatoes?" I ask. "Just dribble it over the turkey and then make a volcano for the gravy and the potatoes." "Geez, those are some instructions," I quip back. "I might have to have Anthony draw me up some blueprints. Exactly how big is this volcano supposed to be?" "Victoria!" barks out Aunt Anne, "don't lick your knife. Is this what they teach young girls at college these days?" And the banter continues, going back and forth in the good-natured way that only a family can razz one another. But throughout it all, eyes around the table constantly keep watch on Aunt Anne, who's serving the baked potatoes. The vigil intensifies when Cousin John's plate makes its way around the table. Trying to look casual, all voices seem to raise an octave or two as Aunt Anne carefully picks up the potato and puts it gingerly down. She lowers it gingerly down on the plate, casually passing it along to my father on her right, who's serving the Brussels sprouts. Did it clink? Does it look right? Does he suspect anything? These unverbalized questions circle the table, conveyed by glances and raised eyebrows. "Looks delicious," exclaims Cousin John when he realizes everyone is staring at him. "It's been so long since I've had a proper Thanksgiving dinner." Aunt Anne looks satisfactorily around at the table, making sure everyone is served. "Okay, let's eat." The table is silent for a few minutes as each person relishes those first delicious bites of turkey and gravy, and then perhaps some turkey and stuffing with a bit of cranberry relish on the fork as well. The green beans snap perfectly, and the hint of almond can be tasted if you close your eyes. Uncle Peter tastes his turnips and is momentarily transported back to childhood. But out of the corners of our eyes, we're all watching Cousin John. He is delicately cutting his turkey and scooping mashed potatoes onto his fork. He's nibbling on the Brussels sprouts and sampling the turnips. Every moment we're waiting for the clink of silverware against hard stone, the exclamation of surprise when his fork bounces off the rock. However, Cousin John is delicately eating his way around the potato. "This potato is delicious," exclaims Jenny, opening up her baked potato in an overemphasized attempt to draw attention to the potato. "Just look at that butter melting." An awkward silence follows. Cousin John looks around happily but slightly conscious of being watched. He takes a few more bites of the stuffing and crunches on a radish from the radish tray. "John, you haven't tasted your baked potato yet," Aunt Anne comments offhandedly a while later. He looks down at the potato, which is now a lone island in the middle of his plate. "You're right," he agrees, perplexed by all of this attention to his potato. Hillary and I exchange rolled eyeballs, making fun of the lack of subtlety on the part of our family. Cousin John looks down at his potato in anticipation. He picks up his fork and knife and clink! He looks confused, and everyone around the table suddenly very busy with their own plates, eyes cast downward, apparently not aware of John's clinking potato. He peers closely at the offending vegetable, and, satisfied with its appearance, places his knife and fork on the potato and exerts pressure. He looks over to Aunt Anne, who smiles sweetly. Screech! Clink! Clank! His knife and fork slide off the potato and crash onto the plate. John looks up, startled. Obvious confusion, embarrassment crossing his face. "Having a bit of trouble there, Johnny?" says Uncle Peter, trying not to laugh. I hide my face in my napkin, and Anthony kicks me under the table, warning me not to ruin the gambit. "Well, as a matter of fact, this potato seems a bit, stiff." That did it. Laughter erupted from the table, and napkins were not going to hide the guffaws anymore. We laughed so hard that no one could explain what was so funny. There were numerous fingers pointing at John's plate, and occasionally there would be exclamations of, "It's so stiff!" and then continued laughter at double velocity. John looked around the room, laughing at himself. He picked up his knife again and deliberately clanked on the potato. "It sure is stiff. As a matter of fact, this is the stiffest potato I have ever come across." He picked it up and examined it closely. "Remarkable," was all he said. After that, it was time to retire to the living room, while the youngest members of the family, myself included, had the onerous task of doing the dishes. But with many hands helping, we soon had the dishes in the dishwasher and all the leftovers wrapped up and into the fridge for lunch for the rest of the weekend. Then it was time for pie, ice cream, and after-dinner drinks in the living room by the fire. It was warm and cozy, with the firelight sending red and orange flickers onto the walls. Dad and Aunt Anne sank into the corner sofas for yet another game of backgammon. Jenny was knitting, and we all chatted about this and that, enjoying the company and the conversation. But every so often someone would mutter, "It's so stiff," and the room would erupt again into happy, familiar laughter. This is the first time in my life that I won't be going back east for Thanksgiving dinner. As a matter of fact, I have to work on Thanksgiving night. We're celebrating Thanksgiving the following weekend. But even though we cannot be with our families, we will make the best dinner we can with new friends and new traditions. Now, if only I could find a rock. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. The end. I hope you enjoyed my little story. And I am missing you all very much, and you're on my mind. And we'll call on Thanksgiving Day for sure. Happy Thanksgiving. I love you. Bye.